The room was cold, and the concrete floor beneath the battered chairs still held the chill of early spring. The only warm thing in that little studio off Pankstrasse was the heavy, toxic air, fumes of cheap coffee, deodorant, and sweat. My short film flickered across the battered white wall, sound trembling from a lopsided speaker. The audience, 6 students, Frau Lehner in her oversized scarf, and 3 men I barely knew but who eyed me like I'd brought them dirty laundry. By the time my credits rolled, a minute earlier than I meant because the ancient projector glitched, silence spread over us. Not thoughtful silence, but the kind that falls when a joke isn't funny and you're waiting for someone to make it better. I tried to look at my shoes but forced myself to meet their eyes. Frau Lehner started, her voice clipped and deliberate. Interesting attempt, Jonas. Can you explain what you wanted to achieve here? I cleared my throat. I wanted to show what loneliness feels like, to make people experience it, not just see it. Lukas, the guy with the shaved head, made a sound between a sigh and a laugh, but it's just 2 shots, your main character just stands there. Nothing really happens, does it? The others snickered. I hated the way they snickered, not in full amusement as if it wasn't even worth the breath. My stomach knotted. Well, I said carefully, the world sometimes stands still. I wanted. Marcus, older, thick glasses fogged up, cut in. Jonas, you're always doing this world standstill thing. No one is interested in a film about a guy waiting in a flat. It's not art. It's, he shrugged, a mistake. This time the laughter came out properly, low and mean. I clenched my jaw, feeling the silence return, but Lena didn't offer comfort. She only adjusted her scarf, jotted something down. It is very avant-garde, but it's not accessible. If you want this to go anywhere, you have to think about the audience a little. The critique ended soon after, but the derision didn't. When I slipped into the corridor, Lukas' voice trailed me. Jonas and his never-ending films about nothing. I forced my feet further from the door than I wanted to go. My hands ached to punch something. Instead, I closed my fist around the USB drive in my pocket and pressed so hard the plastic edges left little dents on my palm. The first real frost of that Berlin spring bit into the city, but the cold was less cruel than the voices in my ears. Mockery at school was one thing, what hurt more was the sideways looks at home, none of my scenes fresh in their minds but their skepticism as sharp as ever. My mother stood at the sink, scouring a saucepan with more force than necessary. Someone from the studio called, "Your camera broke, why don't you just study something with real prospects?" My father, arms crossed and face flushed with judgment, never met my eyes. "He wants to sit in the dark and make movies no one watches. I told your uncle you'd come help in his garage. He needs someone, not a filmmaker." My sisters, twin whirlwinds of indifference, laughed outright when I told them I wanted to direct. "Make us famous, Jonas, then we'll believe you." After dinner, I sat on my narrow bed by the window and listened to the call of trams rattling along Soldener Strasse. I watched their yellow shadows dance on my ceiling. I pressed my USB drive between my palms. On the wall across my bed, I'd taped up a still from Kieslowski's Red, the character's face luminous in red light. I wondered what Kieslowski's parents thought. Months passed, then a year. I lost count of the amount of tepid tea I drank in cold rooms with half-broken cameras. Funding was a constant ache, rejection letters trickled in, and the taste of failure settled on my tongue most mornings. The world spun indifferent, yet every time I considered quitting, something kept pressing at me from inside, a kind of sneaky silence that wouldn't let me settle for an honest job. Anytime I tried to bury my ambition, I found myself plotting new scripts in tram stations, scribbling on napkins, recording city noises from my window at 2 a.m., always trying to capture moments undisturbed by commentary. One evening, almost 2 years later, a friend from the studio, Ivana, the only one who ever watched my scenes twice, dragged me across Alexanderplatz in a sleet storm to see an indie film at Babylon Kino. Shadow and neon blurred through the windows of the tram. "Your films are like this," Ivana said, thrusting hands deep into coat pockets, "just a little lonelier, maybe that's good." After the film, dazed by the character's silence and the slow grace of city streets at night, I felt something loosen, a grip of despair I hadn't known was holding me in place. I spent the next weeks editing scenes I'd shot over the past year in secret, a woman waiting for a letter outside a silent post office, a man staring down pigeons from a rooftop, a pair of hands weaving a basket in a storm. No music, no voiceover, just city, silence and faces waiting for something unnamed. I called it Between Stations. I sent it everywhere, tiny festivals, foreign competitions, anyone who'd take an unbankable, wordless short film from Berlin. The rejections were mostly kind but mostly the same, we're looking for something more accessible. I stopped expecting replies but sent out one more round anyway. 6 months later I got the email, Raindance London. Selected, screening 6 weeks from Friday. Mom barely looked up. Are you still doing that? I thought you would have tired of all this. But something shifted in her mouth, as though she couldn't quite summon another argument. My father, hearing about London, only asked if I needed train fare. I didn't. I borrowed a suit from a friend and crossed the channel with a pack of cigarettes and a USB drive. There in the small, packed screening room, strangers watched my character's silent waiting. No laughter but no boredom either, just a deep, careful stillness that filled the dark. Afterward, a woman with short-cropped hair found me at the bar, pressed my hand. You make waiting impossible to look away from. I stammered, thanked her, and nursed a bitter ginger beer. A week later, another festival, this time in Copenhagen, then Rome, programmed my short. I watched, amazed, as the world opened a crack for my quiet little film. 3 years on, my apartment in Prenzlauer Berg was all glass and cheap art, full of strange gifts from strangers, a Brazilian mask, a stack of festival passes, letters from programmers scribbled with praise. My phone vibrated with bloggers and agents, each wanting the next film. I had offers I had never imagined, funding even for something longer. The biggest came from a streaming platform. A producer named Feldman, who favored black suits and silver cufflinks, took me to dinner in Charlottenburg. Jonas, he said, swirling his wine, I want the city to see itself through your eyes, something quiet but big. You in? I nodded, almost numb. When he signed the contract, my rent, my groceries, even my old camera worries faded into background noise. Between the Tracks, my first feature, tracked 3 stories of people whose paths crossed but never met, a cleaner, a violinist, a subway driver, each with their own silences. We shot for 13 unbroken weeks, fighting June heat and filmy Berlin rain. Some nights I slept on set, curled in a folding chair with rushes flickering in my mind's eye. When it premiered at Berlinale, the cinema filled and the applause was sharp and bright, nothing like the hushed rejective air of that first studio. Critics called it a triumph of minimalism. Friends texted from distant countries. I felt at once 10 feet tall and hopelessly small, yet under all the new noise there was a low, steady longing to show my family, those old classmates, the thing they dismissed. I wanted more than their respect. I wanted them to witness with their own eyes what it meant that I had stayed silent and stubborn. The invitation came from nowhere. My school, celebrating its 20th anniversary, wanted to screen work by notable alumni. They wanted the success story. The email was formal but the undercurrent unmistakable, the lost sheep made good. I hesitated, heart beating slow and reluctant before writing back, happy to attend. Would love to show my films. When I told my parents, my mother set down her mug so gently I barely recognized her. She nodded, almost proud yet wary, as if my return might still be a mistake. My father asked about logistics, then pursed his lips and left the room. Seeing my old flat, my childhood bedroom, felt like time itself shuffling backwards. The twin beds, the cheap IKEA lamp, the still unrepaired scrape along the windowsill, all artifacts of a life I'd half shed. Yet as the day approached, anxiety knotted old fears beneath my ribs. The morning of the screening dawned pale, city light reflecting off wet pavement. I wore my only suit, black pressed flat, and rode the tram across the city like any other Tuesday. At the studio, nothing had changed. Same harsh fluorescent glare, same walls thick with memories. A row of faces greeted me, older classmates, some students, staff with more grey in their hair. Frau Lehner presided, familiar scarf coiled like armor. Lukas and Marcus slouched in the back, older now but their eyes just as appraising. I waited near the projector, balancing a glass of flat sect, watching people drift in, my parents, silent, expectant. My sisters, teetering between irony and curiosity. Someone had hung a poster for my film along the stairwell, my name in block letters, Jonas Mayer. A hush fell when Frau Lehner took the stage. We are proud to have one of our own return to us, she said, voice formal and poised. Jonah's new film has made waves far beyond Berlin. Tonight we watch and welcome him home. My hands trembled as the lights dimmed and the first scene came to life. Suddenly the old room, the one that had caged and mocked me, was filled with my images. The cleaner's cautious steps before sunrise, a violinist's hands trembling as she tuned, silver tracks gleaming in rain. Silence became a force pressing everyone to watch, to listen, even in stillness. No whispers, no laughter. As the credits faded for a moment, no one moved. I forced myself to stand, to face the light. Then applause. Not raucous or wild, but warm, sustained, undeniable. I let myself stand in it. I found Lena's eyes. She smiled, a real one this time, tired perhaps, but careful and kind. The audience dispersed into slow clusters. My father, hands in pockets, stood apart. My mother cried quietly, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue plucked from her purse. I went to them, unsure, nerves buzzing. My father spoke first. "That was your film." I nodded, barely breathing. He nodded once, fists tight. "It was very good." Something unspoken shifted. I felt it. My mother took my hand, squeezed hard. Past them, Marcus and Lukas approached, circles under their eyes, awkward in their shuffle. Lukas started. "Jonah's man didn't see it coming. That was intense. Like really, I couldn't look away." Marcus, sheepish, ducked his head. "Guess you knew what you wanted to do all along. Not so stupid after all." I let the words land but didn't savor their apology too much. The power wasn't in their regret, it was in the honesty of what I'd made. That night I took the tram home, suit wrinkled, head heavy with relief and exhaustion. The city rolled past, lamps glowing against the dark streets. Alone on the platform, every sound seemed new: soft scrape of sneaker against tile, a distant laugh, the quiet anticipation of an arriving train. Berlin, sprawling and cruel and beautiful, welcomed me back exactly as I was. I unlocked the apartment, set my jacket on the same old chair. In the mirror, I met my own tired, content eyes, just long enough to see that behind all my silences, all my stubbornness, there stood not emptiness, but a quiet, steadied resolve. Above my desk, the Kieslowski still glowed in red, unchanged. My thumb traced the edge, remembering every disbelief, every mocking snicker. I had waited, and in the space between rejection and return, in the city's cold and clamor, I had made something enduring from the silence that once tried to swallow me whole.